In this video, I'm going to talk about preservation. So preservation of the environment when it comes to photography. So how can we keep the world clean, orderly, in good status for the next adventurers, explorers, photographers out there? And I know most of this is common sense. I'm not going to talk down to you, try and lecture you. I always get annoyed when photographers lead with environmental stuff and are very preachy about how they talk about it. So I'm going to run through this stuff very quick. I realize that most of you probably aren't doing this stuff in this video. And like I said, it's a lot of common sense. But let's get started. I'm going to run through the 7 principles of Leave No Trace, which are by an organization dedicated to this kind of stuff. So they have a good format that's organized for it. So I'm going to walk you through all 7. So let's start from the top, which is plan ahead. And this is obvious. Like, just make sure when you go out, when you shoot, you know what you're getting into. Don't show up with Air Jordans on an 8-mile hike, carrying the sleeping bag in your hands and the tent in your other hands. Fun fact, one of my friends actually did this. It was on our first backpacking trip ever. I'll admit I wasn't very knowledgeable of the situation either. I did a bunch of stuff that I shouldn't have done. But when you're first getting into this kind of world, you don't understand what it's like to not have hiking shoes or what it's like to carry a sleeping bag for 8 miles. So just prepare, look a little bit into the environment you're going into. Another thing is maps. Like having a map with you just on your phone and making sure your phone's charged are 2 huge game changers. There's been 2 or 3 times where I've been out in the dark trying to find my way back to the trailhead because my phone is dead or my phone doesn't have the signal right now and I should have printed out a map or at least followed directions a little bit better. So just plan, and trust me, it'll save you so much headache when you're in the field. Trust me, it's not fun when you're in the dark trying to find your way back. The second principle is to travel and camp on durable surfaces. So this basically means don't destroy the environment so that you can get a shot or you can camp in a certain spot. And obviously if you're in the middle of nowhere, no one's coming there, then sure, like camp on the grass, no one cares. Move a plant out of your way for a shot, who cares? No one's gonna see it. But if you're at a place like a national monument where there's hundreds of people coming every day, killing that green plant so you can get a shot is ruining that environment for a ton of other people. So that's an instance where I wouldn't recommend moving things like that. And also this accounts for like traveling across surfaces that are sensitive. So tundra grass, for example, is very sensitive. If you step on it, it can take a very long time for that to grow back. It's very fragile. So one thing I like to do is just like hopscotch, like hop across the stones, because there's usually big stones on the ground where there is tundra grass. So that's a great way to navigate it. Also flower fields. Be careful about trudging over flowers. I know there was some field near LA a while ago that was being stomped on by a bunch of photographers and influencers that were trying to get shots. So, just be careful of where things are. Another strategy you can use is to look for game trails. So this is essentially pathways where other animals have wandered. So finding those trails can help, reinforce the trail system. So stick on the trail if there is one. If not, like you're in the middle of nowhere, no one cares. But just keep in mind what you're destroying. Third principle is dispose of waste properly. And this goes without saying, just don't leave trash anywhere. I'd always just put it in my pocket. Cans, like if you're having a beer at the top of a mountain or something, just crush up the can and then put it in your bag. Usually I like to just bring like a little Ziploc bag so you don't get beer all over your camera gear. Really easy principle, just little Ziploc bag, bring it down, bring it in, done. Next principle is leave what you find. And this one can be a little bit of a double-edged sword. It's a little tempting. Sometimes I've gone to places where there's been an absolute abundance of beautiful seashells and you kind of want to take one. I wouldn't recommend doing that just because it takes away from the scene, the environment, what have you. If like I said, if you're in the middle of nowhere, no one's going to show up there, then sure, take something. But if it's a place where a lot of people are showing, don't leave that environment, because if everyone were to take one seashell, then it's going to kill it. The best thing about being a photographer is you can take a photo of something if you like it and not have to carry it with you anymore. And another thing to keep in mind is if you're living in a car and you're collecting seashells, where are you going to keep those seashells and what's the purpose of them going to be? They're just going to take up room. So keep that in mind. Little artifacts can take up a lot of space in your car if you're traveling or on the road. Next principle is to minimize campfire impacts. So this basically means if you're camping in an area where there is a fire hazard, like high extreme fire danger, then don't have a campfire. These things can get out of hand really easy. All it takes is one little spark to fly away into some brush and boom, you've caused millions and millions of dollars worth of damages and put many families outside of homes. So be careful, look for fire regulations depending on where you're at. And if you do have a fire, just make sure to put it out. The easiest way to do this is to just dump buckets of water over the fire. Especially if you're near a river, then you can just take the water from the river and dump it onto it. Another way to do it is to bury it in the dirt. If you can't find water or you're very scarce, just cover those coals in dirt and put it out. Next principle is to respect wildlife. And you know, this goes without saying, don't approach a buffalo, don't approach a bear. Deer, they're probably gonna run away. It also extends to drones, so don't fly drones where there's birds nesting because it can scare them off. Somebody even told me that if you fly a drone near a bighorn sheep, it could cause them to jump off a mountain. I don't know if that's true or not, but if there's animals, don't be like chasing them with a drone. It's just kind of dumb, you know. You're freaking an animal out. Like if you're an animal and you see a drone, you're gonna freak out. So I wouldn't want that chasing me. So just be respectful of animals. One funny story, my buddy actually tried to approach a baby grizzly bear and he was like, I got this, like he wanted to get a photo of it, so he just kept getting closer. And you know, 100% a bad idea, especially because there's probably a mom nearby somewhere. But he was walking up to it, super cocky about it. Next thing you know, the grizzly jumps at him, literally lunges. This little tiny baby bear freaks him out. He jumps back like 10 feet and we all just ran away after that. So don't even underestimate the power of even little tiny babies. The mom's usually around. It's not worth a photo. Just get a zoom lens. You can find super duper zoom lenses for pretty cheap if you find them secondhand or really old ones. So one more thing in this principle is baiting animals. So there's been a few wildlife photographers out there, I'm not gonna say any names, who've gotten in trouble for, you know, providing food for animals so that they get closer to them so that they can take a good shot of them. You know, in theory, it sounds like a great idea, but you're actually now creating a habit for animals where they don't want to hunt for wild food anymore because they're relying on you and other people to feed them for food. So it starts to destroy the ecosystem in a pretty impactful way that you might not realize right off the bat. So it's not worth the shot. Plus, you know, if you have an animal looking right at the camera, it's usually not as, you know, candid as they call it. So don't bait animals. It's frowned upon pretty heavily in the photography community. The final principle is to be considerate of others, which, you know, goes without saying. Don't be yelling, screaming. If you're bringing music, just put it in your earphones. I've seen literally people walk into national parks with music blasting out of their backpacks on super crowded trails, which is pretty mind-blowing to me. Another thing is if there's people in your shot, it's hard to get annoyed and be mad at people because they have every right to be there as much as you. So I talked about this in the social engineering video. Basically just start a conversation with people and then lightly ask them to move after you've built a little rapport will go much better than just flat out telling people to move for your shot. And at the end of the day, most people are considerate of each other. So if I see another photographer shooting a shot, I'm not gonna go stand purposely right in front of them. So just be omniscient of where people are shooting and respectful of others, and you'll have a good time in nature. So those are the 7 main principles of Leave No Trace. Don't be a dumbass. Let's move to the next video.